Good evening, folks. We're gonna wait just a minute or two longer here, see if anybody else is gonna jump on. And we will get started. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Julia Vaughn, the Executive Director of Common Cause Indiana. Glad to be joined with my panelists this evening for a discussion about election issues we see facing us ahead in the next few weeks. So hold tight and we will get started here very quickly. All right, Vaughn, we ready to get started?
Yes, we are. Hi, everyone. My name is Vaughn Smalls. I am the Midwest communication strategist for Common Cause. Thank you all so much for joining this webinar tonight. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can feel free to ask them in the Q&A or the chat tab, and we will field those at the end of our discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Julia Vaughn. She introduced herself a little bit earlier this evening. She is the Executive Director of Common Cause.
Thanks, Vaughn. Thanks so much for being our Zoom guru this evening. Again, we're really looking forward to the discussion. Thanks again for joining us. So we're going to jump right in. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the co-president of the League of Women Voters of Indiana, Linda Hanson. She's got an important announcement and she's going to introduce our next speaker as well. Linda.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, this is important. We've got a lot of work to do before the election. And one of the things we are planning in order to inform voters is a Secretary of State debate. I'm going to share the poster and let you take a look. This is, given our topic tonight, a crucial race for Indiana. And it is being hosted by the League of Women Voters, but WFYI is producing it and they are underwriting it. Just a tiny bit of history. The debate commission was formed about 2006, 2007, and the league helped to form that so that statewide we were not doing any more candidate forums and we could focus on our local candidate forums. However, this year the debate commission is doing just the Senate debate, which will be on October 16th. And so we chose to try to work out a Secretary of State debate. It will be held on the 10th of October. Both of those debates are being broadcast on WFYI and carried statewide on other affiliates. The primary purpose of these, obviously, is to let voters hear from the candidates. And so we are taking questions from the public. So if you have questions that you want to ask the Secretary of State candidates, I will put the link in the chat, but it is actually on the League of Women Voters Indiana website. So I will post it. And then you can also check on your candidates afterwards on vote411.org. So local PBS and NPR stations will be carrying this. You can check them for coverage. Okay. So 2 debates, Secretary of State and the Senate, 2 statewide debates. And those are both crucial, but particularly Secretary of State because of all the election rules that come out of the Secretary of State's office, the election supervision, and we already know how important that is, all the way down to the local clerks. So I hope to see you at both of those debates. Thank you. And right now, I'm going to introduce Caren Short, who is with the League of Women Voters nationally. She's in legal and research, and she hails from Indiana. So she's got an interest in Indiana politics and what happens with our elections. And I'm going to give her a chance to talk about our national picture and how that impinges on Indiana. Caren?
Thanks so much, Linda. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. As Linda said, I'm Caren Short. I'm the legal director at the League of Women Voters of the United States. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm excited to be here with you tonight. As Linda said, I'm from Indiana. My dogs are going to be very excited because they hear me talking excitedly, so please ignore them. Grew up in Anderson. My mom is now a member of the Anderson-Madison County League, and I believe she's joined us on the webinar. And I went to Purdue, so lots of Indiana ties. I'm in Atlanta now, and I'm really excited to talk to y'all. We have 41 days until the election, just over a month. Activity is getting exciting. Everybody's getting ready to get out the vote, provide voter education, ensure that voters have what they need to register, to vote, and then have their vote count, right? So it's a very exciting time. But of course, you know, we all watch the news, we're all paying attention, and it seems like there are some nefarious elements out there that are trying to interfere with our ability to have free, fair, accessible election for everyone. These elements can make voting harder, and they can also discourage people from voting. So I'd like to just give a quick overview of some of these issues, but then really highlight how well prepared we are and positioned each of you are to fight against these. We are the antidote to all of these issues. We have the power to make people excited about voting, confident that they can vote, and empowered to make a plan and vote. Okay, so what are some elements that can prevent free, fair, accessible elections? So being a lawyer, the big one that I think of immediately are laws, right? State legislatures are passing a lot of laws, particularly after the 2020 election, but even before then, that we know have the impact of suppressing the vote potentially. That could be their purpose for passing them. We know that it makes it harder to vote, some of these laws. I'm going to drop in the chat, I'm going to drop a lot of resources in the chat, so I hope they're useful. A wonderful resource from the Brennan Center. They track all of the state laws that have been passed, good and bad, that interact with voting and elections. So it's a really excellent resource. I think the last time they updated it was maybe May. So check that out. Some of the laws that you may have heard about, some of these omnibus voter suppression bills, anti-voter bills here in Georgia, SB 202, Florida, SB 90, Texas, the big one, SB 1. And these laws have a lot of provisions that are making it harder for people to register, to stay on the rolls, to actually show up and vote, to vote in a way that is accessible and easy for them, and to have your vote counted. Another way that these laws accomplish that is by restricting the activities of voter education and registration organizations like the League, like Common Cause. It makes it harder for us to do our work when states are literally criminalizing some of the work that we do. It makes it very difficult. And even the laws that don't specifically restrict certain activity, either by voter rights organizations or voters, they can have the chilling effect of making people afraid to even attempt to vote in a certain way, to help somebody out, because they're not sure what could potentially get them in trouble. Another trend that we're seeing past 2020 are these election interference laws, laws that could potentially inject some partisan interference with election results. And also we're seeing laws that direct resources to prosecuting election crime. So, you know, in Florida, we've heard about the Florida I don't remember if it's a task force or what it's called, but prosecuting people who, in my mind, haven't done anything wrong. So it's a lot of resources to spend on something that we're pretty clear doesn't happen on a widespread basis, which is voter fraud. These laws, that's the basis that states give for these laws, is to protect against voter fraud and create election integrity. Our elections are already extremely secure. They operate really well. And so we don't really have evidence that these laws are going to prevent any voter fraud because we don't see it happening. What we do see happening is voters having a harder time voting because of these laws. And I think that's what we should all be really concerned about. This is where the league, this is where partner organizations, Common Cause, this is where we come in because we are there to help voters understand what the laws are. Coming up to an election, we're keeping track of how things changed. What ID can I present at the polls? You know, changes a lot based on state legislatures. We provide all that information. Vote 411 is an amazing resource. I encourage you to use it. Share it with all of your friends and family. Another place to fight these laws, of course, is in court. We are, the league, Common Cause, are plaintiffs in a lot of cases challenging these harmful anti-voter laws. We're trying to get these laws struck down, if not ahead of this upcoming election, but at some point in the future, so it doesn't harm voters in the future. Another resource that I will link from the Brennan Center is an election tracker. So this is, a litigation tracker. This is tracking all of the active litigation going on regarding voting rights, election laws. And if you look there, I think there's a fun, good announcement from Indiana that just happened earlier this month regarding accessibility of mail-in ballots for blind voters, which is really great. Another issue that we're very aware of course, is mis and disinformation. This is something that's just always happening. It's you know, the age of the internet and social media. So what are these? So misinformation, as you're probably aware, is sharing false information, but without the intent to cause harm. Disinformation is sharing false information with the intent to harm. Both have negative impacts, but they come from sort of a different place. So how do we counter it? I'm gonna drop another link that is to our league guidance around mis and disinformation. I won't read through all of it, but just want to highlight some of the recommendations that we see both from the league and elsewhere. Never repeat or quote the bad information. Don't give it more fuel. Counter it with the correct, accurate information. Really drown out the bad information because you're flooding with such good, accurate information. Provide correct, trustworthy sources, links. You know, we are the vaccine to these negative misinformation and disinformation campaigns. Couple of other areas that are concerning. One is voter roll challenges. So these come in a couple of different ways. Either individual voters are being challenged when they go to vote or after they've voted. This is concerning, of course. But then there are these larger challenges to counties or local jurisdictions' voter rolls. They're saying all these people should not be on here. We're requiring you to purge all these people off the rolls. We see this in many, many states, including Indiana. I could talk for a really long time about voter purges and the National Voter Registration Act, but just know that within 90 days of a federal election, a state cannot purge people in a systematic way. They cannot take them off the rolls. So if you're seeing people being taken off the rolls, definitely alert us alert Common Cause, alert your favorite legal organization that works on these issues. And then to combat this, you can encourage your friends, family, neighbors to check their voting information. They can't take you off the rolls, but if your information is incorrect, you may have an issue when you show up. So make sure that your information is correct. Go to the Secretary of State website and check there. Finally, one of the most concerning issues, intimidation and violence, threats of intimidation and violence, either at the polls, or we've even heard about groups that are going door to door and threatening people, asking them how they voted and various other concerning, invasive questions. Sometimes they have weapons, sometimes they're in official looking uniforms. This is very stressful, right? This is worrisome. We're also worried about potential threats to election workers, who are just trying to do their job, a public service. My dogs are fighting. I'm sure my mom's loving this. I want to highlight a couple of things that we've done at the League to fight this. So we've been involved in 2 lawsuits, one that has already ended out of Minnesota, where we successfully got a court to prevent a bad actor from essentially intimidating people at the polls. They were going to hire people, place them at the polls, and I'm sorry, and intimidate people. And so we got a really important decision out of the district court in Minnesota, where the judge said you can't do this, and then put the company under court supervision for 5 years to make sure that they don't in the future. The other case is out of, I clicked the wrong links. Okay, these is going to be both of the links here. The other case is out of Colorado. This is one of the groups that's going door to door, knocking on people's doors, asking them invasive questions about voting, sort of scaring people into thinking that they shouldn't go and vote. This is an ongoing case that we've challenged in Colorado, and we're still pursuing it against this group. So how do we fight it? Lawsuits, of course. This type of intimidation is illegal under 2 different federal laws, which I will paste a fact sheet here. As I said, we're the antidote to this fear. We can't let these narratives of fear, intimidation, election integrity, voter fraud, thwart the work that we're doing. We have confidence in our elections and our election workers. We have to make people understand that they are safe when they vote, that they can go vote, have their vote counted, register to vote. And the more people that do that and encourage their friends and their neighbors to do that, the more we will defeat this narrative. And then if you're seeing evidence of intimidation, of violence, if you're hearing about it, let me know, let the National League, let Common Cause know. There are things we can do about it. There are things we can do to prevent it, to sort of punish people who do it after the fact. And then if nothing else, elevate it to election protection. I know we're going to talk about this later, but 866 Our Vote is an amazing resource. You can always call and report any issues, and they will be elevated to the correct spot. So I'm going to stop there. I know I threw a lot of information at you, but I'm eager to answer questions and have further discussion. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Caren. That was great information and lots of great links in the chat box. So definitely, folks, access all of that, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions of Caren at the end of our panel here. It's my pleasure now to turn it over to Cliff Helm. He is program counsel at the Chicago Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, and it's been my pleasure to work with Cliff earlier this year on the primary election, worked on election protection together, and he does a great job. So thanks so much for joining us tonight, Cliff.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. So again, I'm Cliff. I'm an attorney with the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. I work in our voting rights team, and so we're actually regional. One of our attorneys, actually our lead attorney, Ami Gandhi, is based in Indiana, so we work on voting rights in Illinois and Indiana. Um, and for this, what we do with elections is work very closely with the Election Protection Coalition, which I think Caren maybe just put the link for that, 866ourvote.org. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about what that organization is, what they do, and how we interact with it. So Election Protection is a national coalition. They answer calls from voters through all 50 states. And it's at that 866-OUR-VOTE phone number. And they answer calls starting now. They've been up and for a while, and they'll go all the way through election day and past election day. We've already seen calls come in from states across the country, from Illinois and Indiana, from everybody. Everybody's got questions, and they're coming up, and there are things that are ranging from how do I register to vote to where do I vote to somebody's in the polling place and they're making threats or something like that, something a little bit more difficult to deal with. And we staff that hotline through volunteers. It's mostly through attorney volunteers, and they connect with local law firms to staff the hotline, to answer all the questions that are coming in, and turn to organizations like ours, along with those law firms, to create the resources and training materials for the attorneys that are answering those calls from voters. So one more thing from the another link. There's a lot more details about each state that's on that website. So I'm going to post this in here. Actually, I can't. I'm wondering maybe if somebody would be able to post the Indiana specific link within there. I'm going to sending that to some of us. And it's one of many resources that identifies something around registration dates, basic information about where and how to vote, and the different things that are specific to Indiana in terms of its voting laws. So in addition to the law firms around the country that are staffing the hotline itself, on the day of the election, our office will train, supervise, and recruit volunteers to answer calls for Indiana and for Illinois. So we cover both those states. And we'll have volunteers throughout the day answering calls that are coming in, again, ranging from logistical things to more intense pieces of information that maybe we have to take some extra steps with. After we get those calls, we do our best to answer them. Sometimes it means that we do have to reach out to people that are on the ground, such as Julia, and talk through the issue and see what some of the next steps could be, because you can't solve everything through the phone. Sometimes you need somebody in person to go see what's actually happening. Frequently, that means connecting with Common Cause Indiana or some other partner organizations that maybe are more focused in different parts of the state, and figuring out what the proper sort of next step could be. It might be that somebody can be there. It might be that we need to talk to the election authority and figure out what we can do to resolve that situation. I will say it's a big, long, kind of chaotic day for everybody involved in the election work, and so it's lots going on, and it gets pretty exciting and pretty interesting to sort of handle what is coming there. So that's a quick overview of 866-OUR-VOTE. One last thing about that is that if you go onto the main website, you can see all the different types of organizations that are involved and really see how big of an effort this is, and how many national organizations are involved, how many local state organizations are really engaged and involved, and just seeing how many people are really putting their effort into this work that's going on there. And I think with that, I'll pass it back to Julia.
Thanks, Cliff. You provided me a great segue to talk about our work on election protection here in Indiana. And I would agree, election day does tend to be pretty chaotic, but it's also exciting and it's really satisfying. I can't say that there's anything that's much better than, it gets to be 6:10 p.m. on election day and you've helped a whole bunch of people exercise their right to vote. So it's one of those really immediately gratifying things that we do. Most of the work that we do, it's policy, it's very long term, it's inch by inch by inch, but you get to see the fruit of your labors right in front of you, which is not to imply that we're successful all the time. It can also be heartbreaking when, somebody, you see somebody turned away because of Indiana's very restrictive laws. But I can't say enough about, we've been working with election protection here in Indiana since 2008. And we have just, encountered hundreds and hundreds of great volunteers who I believe most have been, really gratified and satisfied with the experience that they had. So my job tonight is just to give you more details, and I'm going to do that by sharing a few slides here. And let me expand my screen. All right. There we go. I'm going to move it over a little bit. All right, you all know me, or most of you know me. I'm Julia Vaughn, the Executive Director of Common Cause Indiana. And again, thanks for joining us for this discussion about protecting the vote in 2022. Caren did a great job of providing an overview of what's going on across the country, and I want to zero in here in Indiana. We're expecting the usual administrative issues that we see every election. People think they're registered, they're not on the rolls, something's happened. We have a real overuse of provisional ballots in Indiana. Whenever there's a problem, instead of trying to find the root of the problem and solve it, poll workers have a tendency to just push a provisional ballot on a voter and not really explain what they have to do in order to get that ballot counted. In most counties, the vast majority of provisional ballots are not counted. So we're expecting all of that, but we're also expecting those typical problems to be exacerbated because we are seeing an influx of new registrants, new people who are getting themselves registered to vote. And we're also seeing a lot of people who are infrequent voters update their voter registration. So they'll be showing up. So, the potential for people to have been moved to an inactive voter status. And that's one of the most common reasons why they're not in the poll book. So, we're expecting all of those usual problems that we face on election day. But of course, we're also expecting big turnout. So long lines for early voting. We certainly saw that here in Indianapolis in 2020. At some locations, people waiting 6, 7, even 8 hours to vote early. Didn't see those long lines in most places, interesting on election day. But again, we do expect good turnout this year, given everything that's going on politically. So we definitely have to be prepared for long lines. As Caren said, there's just too much disinformation and misinformation being bandied about. So we've definitely got to work hard to ensure that people are not believing the crazy stuff that will be passed around on the internet, that they're getting good information that they can use to cast their ballot. And then we are also concerned about interference by big lie promoters. They're here in Indiana. They certainly have been active in some counties. So we're wary of them potentially causing problems on election day. Let's talk a little bit. As far as we can tell, these folks are sort of organized around the pillow guy, Mike Lindell. He's had a road show, been sending some Ohio math teacher around to convince people that, there were all sorts of nefarious things going on and the potential for that in 2022. So at the state level, they're organized as Indiana First Action. At the local level, they're organized as, pick your county, Brown County Citizens for Election Integrity, Hamilton County Citizens for Election Integrity. And in some counties around the state, they're making Freedom of Information request for a cast vote record. The problem is in the vast majority of counties here in Indiana, that doesn't exist because it comes about through post-election audits. And as those of you who follow these issues know, Indiana just passed a law to implement that in all counties. It has been tested in Marion County, but the vast majority of counties wouldn't be able to produce this record. So they are pestering county election boards and county clerks with these requests for information that doesn't exist. Earlier this month was a deadline that counties no longer had to preserve election records from 2020. So in several counties, there were lawsuits filed to try to prevent counties to force them to preserve these records beyond that deadline, which is required by state law. Now, none of these lawsuits have been successful. They've failed really spectacularly at the local level. But, will their lack of success motivate them to interfere with voting in 2022? And so, there is the potential for them to do some of the things that Caren outlined when she spoke, harassing voters, asking inappropriate questions. I guess my biggest fear is that in some counties, they will volunteer to work as poll workers and, actually get inside the polling place and be an intimidating and troubling presence inside polling locations in our state. So, but as Caren said, we're prepared and we will be organized to ensure that they're not successful. So Cliff did a good job of talking about the Election Protection Project from a national perspective. So this slide just reinforces some of the information that he shared with you earlier. Let's talk about the opportunities here in Indiana. One of the things about the Election Protection Project, we've got a whole lot of swag available. So we've got yard signs, we've got car magnets. Would love to get those out across the state because those are two things that are really good to publicize the hotline, 866-OUR-VOTE. I think we need to generate more calls from Indiana voters because we know we're going to have, new voters, people who don't regularly participate. So let's get that hotline out across the state because we know people are going to have questions. They're going to need some help in some places. We're going to be posting lots of information on Facebook, on Twitter. We don't do too much on Instagram, but hopefully we'll pick that up. So share our post and share other Election Protection Project partners' posts on social media. Traditional media, we could use help spreading the word via letters to the editors, call into radio shows. I do a regular spot 15 minutes from 2:30 to 2:45 on WTLC radio here in Indianapolis. So I welcome folks to call into the show so we can talk about election protection. Certainly there are other radio shows across the state where you can start that conversation. would invite you, if you're interested in monitoring misinformation and disinformation, National Common Cause has a really good project going with that. You can sign up to monitor this kind of thing on social media with National Common Cause. They'll provide training and a great way for people to get involved. We need some help delivering the election protection yard signs and materials that our voter advocates will use for early voting and election day. So if you can help us make deliveries, that would be a great way to get involved. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the role that voter advocates play. Attorneys are always good to answer hotline calls. So again, lots of different ways to engage with the Election Protection Project. I'm going to give you some detailed information about the roles of voter advocates. Sometimes, and in most other states, they refer to this role as poll monitors. I don't like to do that in Indiana because, you know, poll monitors does have a very specific meaning in our law. So we refer to these folks as voter advocates. And I think that's a pretty good description of what their role is, to be advocates for voters. Now, we don't do this because of resources and staffing. We don't do this in every county. But this year we will be doing voter advocates, deploying voter advocates in Marion County, Allen County. I want to give a shout out there to Count Us, Indiana, which is the lead organization in Allen County for the Election Protection Project. Also want to welcome St. Joseph County. This is going to be the first time that we've had a field program going on up there. Great work by Jerry Pawelski, the president of the St. Joseph County League of Women Voters. So we're excited to be active in St. Joe County. I've got an intern down in Monroe County, so we will be deploying some advocates down there. And certainly folks in neighbor counties to Marion, you're welcome to work in Indianapolis if you would like to volunteer to be a voter advocate. We can use you, I guarantee it. We do require training, and there will be both virtual and in-person options available for training. Again, we can, the role of the voter advocates will vary in some counties. But here in Indianapolis, we'll have you putting up yard signs, displaying the hotline number at polling places. We've got some voting rights postcards you'll be handing out there to connect folks with the hotline if necessary. If there's a problem, we'll train you how to advocate for voters. And then very importantly, you'll report any significant problems to me or the other leads in the other counties. So stipends are available and half and full day shifts are available. You can work from 6 a.m. to noon, or you could work from noon to 6 p.m. You can also work the entire day if you would choose to do that. Another new thing we've added this year is we are going to be having voter advocates stationed at some locations for early voting in Marion County. As I mentioned, we saw extremely long lines for early votings in some locations here in Indy in 2020. So we simply think it's a good idea. There's just a tremendous number of people who want to get voting over and done with before Election Day. So we want to make sure that we've got voter advocates stationed at some of those locations before Election Day. So here's how you can get involved. You can sign up at protectthevote.net. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We'll continue to promote volunteer opportunities through social medias. Likewise, we will continue to send out information to our members. So if you're not on our mailing list, please go to commoncause.org and sign up for our cause nets. And then finally, if you've got any specific questions, please don't hesitate to contact me, Vaughn at commoncause.org. right, well, is all I had. So I think we're ready to answer questions. Again, you can type them in the chat, the Q&A. And Vaughn, do we have any to answer?
Yes, we do. And I think you actually answered it, but just for the audience again, for those interested in volunteering their time, where can they connect with the Common Cause trainings?
You can sign up at protectthevote.net, and that comes into me. We've got a database of people who have signed up around the state. The trainings, I never like to do trainings too far in advance of, when we'll be using them. So we'll start probably, since early voting will start on the 12th here, October 12th. We'll do an initial training, virtual training for people who are going to work early voting. And then really like 10 days before the election, we will do a number of different virtual training options, do a daytime one, an evening one, a weekend one, to make sure we're accommodating people's varying schedules. So sign up the easiest way to do it is sign up at protectthevote.net.
Thank you, Julia. And just for all of our participants, I just wanted to flag once more that all the links provided throughout the webinar will be sent via an email that you'll receive after the call. So, yeah. We have another question. Someone missed Linda's announcement about the senator debate. So Linda, would you actually like to go over that once more, please? Oh, I think Linda, you're on.
Yeah, the Senate debate, the Senate debate is the 16th of October, which is a Sunday afternoon. It's at 7 p.m. On Wi-Fi, WFYI, and broadcast throughout the state. The Secretary of State debate is the night before before voter registration ends on the 10th of October, also at 7 p.m. So ours is on a Monday night, and the debate commissions is on a Sunday night, both at 7, both broadcast from WFYI. And I posted the links for submitting questions. And I want to reiterate again how important the Secretary of State position is, because if you listen to what Julia was saying about requests about 2020 voter information, my own clerk has said he's been inundated with requests, and he said, I can't answer them all. But he said, we don't have those records, and I just have to get that answer out. But the clerks also all received an order from Todd Rokita, our Attorney General, not to destroy the 2020 election materials. So, it's important for that Secretary of State to be able to have some control over what's happening in the clerk's offices. And we already know, some of you know from where you're living, that there may be only one clerk candidate on your ballot. That clerk is going to be extremely important for making sure that the elections run smoothly. And if that particular person happens to be an election denier, then we're going to have a problem. So the Secretary of State role is huge. Please come to the debate and send your questions in for that.
Yeah, I would really encourage people to, the folks attending this webinar, you understand how important voting rights are, and you understand how important that, Indiana's laws are. Our restrictive laws definitely impact low turnout. So, let's get questions in. Let's really, control this conversation. It's obviously frustrating that, one candidate continues to refuse. I know there have been a number of, just this week, I believe the Bar Association held a Secretary of State debate, and the Republican candidate just isn't showing up. which is really frustrating because he keeps changing his positions. Before the Republican convention, he was talking about, oh, we should only have 2 weeks of early voting, and now he's backed away from that. So it would certainly be helpful for voters to hear directly from Mr. Morales as to what his positions are. And certainly I would encourage folks, Common Cause has done a candidate survey, the League has done it, and of course, he's not responded. So I would certainly encourage folks to contact the Morales campaign, let them know you're, an advocate for voting rights in Indiana, and you really would like to know what his positions on these issues are, because he said some very extreme things, and, it's important for voters to be informed.
So we have 2 candidates, which enables us to hold the debate, the Democrat and the Libertarian. And we contacted all 3 of them. In fact, we contacted Morales repeatedly, and he has said to the public, to reporters and so forth, that he has declined the invitation. But that seems to me to say that he has responded to us to say he's declining, which he has not done. So I'm going to post his access, his contact for his campaign. And I think you should do what Julia suggests and contact him and say, we'd like to hear from you. We gave him until October 3rd to say he would participate. So.
Thank you both. We have another question here. Would it be helpful to volunteer as a poll worker? If so, how do we sign up?
Yes, certainly in most counties, they need poll workers. I know here in Marion County, I've had a lot of my regular election protection volunteers say, they're trying to get me to sign up. What should I do? You can certainly make a difference in either role. Now, in some counties, the process is more controlled by the political parties. The county party chairs always get first dibs in terms of selecting poll workers. And in your small counties with strong parties, they get the job done. But in a lot of counties, particularly bigger counties like Marion, the clerk at really the last minute has to fill in the gaps. So, if you're active in a political party, then probably it would make sense to, volunteer via those channels. If you're not, then you can contact your county clerk's office and let them know that you'd like to work the election. And, it's not just those poll worker positions. Here in Marion County, there is a tremendous need for people to process absentee ballots, that kind of thing, to work at the election warehouse on East Washington Street. So there are a lot of opportunities, and obviously these are paid opportunities. We call them volunteers, but poll workers are paid, not enough in my opinion, but they are paid positions.
Thank you, Julia. We have another question here going back to the debates. Are either of them in-person events?
Both of them are studio debates, so that the candidates and the moderator, which happens to be the same person in both, will be in the studio, but there will be no audience in the studio. So they will be broadcast, and then they will also be recorded so that they can be accessed later. Family and press will be able to watch in the community room at WFYI, and campaign workers.
Thank you, Linda. Our next question. I have a concern that the rural counties are more likely to have election deniers. Will we have anyone ready to help at those particular counties?
Yeah, I have that same concern too. And, unfortunately, as I said, our resources don't allow us to have voter advocates, but, we are certainly reaching out to everyone across Indiana and, we can equip you with certain resources, but the ultimate resources is 866 Our Vote, that hotline. That's available no matter where you're at. And so, even if you don't sign up to be a volunteer for election protection, if you hear of something going on in your county, if you witness something going on in your county, call the election protection hotline. That's absolutely the best way to counter, because, the volunteers on the end of the phone line can get in touch with me. We've often had issues in counties where we didn't have a volunteer, but we're able to get in touch with the election board, the county clerk, and address issues that way. So, that 866 Our Vote is a great resource in a lot of different situations.
Can I also add, and there's a question in the chat that this goes a little bit to as well, from Susan about, I believe, Susan, you were going to be a poll worker, sorry, and like working as an election coordinator or judge. But what happens if somebody is doing something in the actual polling place? I think a similar answer sort of applies for voters if they see it. 866 Our Vote, definitely call. And see, where it is, giving details, and that helps to figure out if there's a way to go advocate about what we could do. Particularly for election judges and people that are working in the polling places, I'm sure there will be some sort of manual and sort of chain of who you might want to talk to in a situation like that. But we often do get calls from people that are working in polling places, and also telling us this as sort of I couldn't get an answer from my supervisor or somebody in the county clerk's office or wherever, and trying to look for other solutions. So we sometimes do get those calls as well. We would encourage people to report that. It does help us. We collect a lot of data in terms of what types of things are happening throughout it. So the more information we have in there, even if it is something that got resolved, sort of the better it is for a long term, how we can collect it and utilize it moving forward.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize that, we don't train our voter advocates to, be the supermen and women of the polling place and, take on these folks trying to make trouble. The idea is to be there to protect voters. And so, we get into this with our training, but I don't want folks to walk away from this thinking, I don't know, I don't want to put myself in, harm's way by working for election protection. There's a lot of great resources at the national level, trainings every week on how we engage with these types of situations. So just want to encourage people to participate. Obviously, the potential is there for anything to happen, but I think we're well prepared to deal with it.
I thank you all. Our next question, I think Linda actually answered it, but if we want to say it out loud, Republicans keep saying that both Common Cause and League of Women Voters are partisan. How can I counter that?
So
I'll repeat a little
Linda,
bit
go
about,
ahead.
yeah, I'll repeat a little bit about what I said, but then Caren maybe want to respond since I answered, but we don't support any candidates or any parties, period. And I know that goes for Common Cause as well. We have positions that we hold, and in the case of the League for voting rights, this is over 100 years. So yeah, Caren, you want to add?
Nothing to change about that. I would just reinforce what you just said, rely on our history, our reputation, what we have done Both the League and Common Cause are known as, pro-democracy, nonpartisan, and, decide when you want to engage, when it's worth it to engage with these attacks. Sometimes it's not worth it. Just rely on the fact that you know that these organizations are nonpartisan and we're doing good government work. So, yeah.
And I always like to remind people that Common Cause was founded by John Gardner, who was the only Republican to serve in the administration of Lyndon Johnson. So our bipartisanship goes back to our very beginning. And we're an organization like the League that is focused on issues, not politics. It's simply the reality of today that more Democrats support voting rights than Republicans. But again, we keep it on the issues and I think stay above the political fray. So, I just always, certainly, I hear that at the State House all the time. And, you just guide the conversation back to the issues.
Thank you all. Our next question. At this time, is there a comprehensive list of election deniers, both within the state or nationally?
I just Googled it when I saw that question, and I saw a few news articles that list people who are running for office. I think that's what the question is getting at, in various states and in other offices who maybe deny that Biden won the election. So I'll look at those links and see which is maybe helpful, and we'll include it in our email with links. But I think you could Google it, honestly.
Thanks, Caren. Our next question. I signed up to be a poll worker for the first time in the election earlier this year. The text that was sent to me for training was a spam, so by the time that I contacted them, it was too late for training. How long should I wait to make sure that I get contacted before the November 8th election?
I'd get back with them tomorrow, again, whether you choose to go the route of applying with the county office or your political party. I mean, those lists are being compiled right now. So tomorrow.
In this brief interlude, I want to also say that the 866 number, 866 our vote, is also on Vote 411. So anybody who's going there for information, it'll also be there. They can have it.
Thank you both. This next question, I believe, has to do with safety during elections. With Indiana having an open carry law, do we know if guns are allowed at the polls?
Yes, they are. As crazy as that sounds, yes, they are. Poll workers can carry guns inside the polling place, and we've had that. Always get some calls on the election protection hotline from voters who understandably aren't comfortable with it. So unfortunately, yes, they are allowed in polling places. Interestingly, actually, Tim Wesco, the chair of the House Elections Committee, who's no progressive, he actually had a bill to try to sort of regulate that, and it went nowhere. His Republican colleagues were like, yep, nope, no restrictions. So yes.
I think one thing that's important to remember, a couple of things that are important to remember. This last Supreme Court term, there was a pretty big ruling in the Bruin case that had to do with states wanting to restrict guns in certain public places. The court was very clear that polling locations are special places that require protection and safety, similar to like schools, things like that. There are certain areas that should remain protected, and states should be free to protect those. Now, Indiana hasn't chosen to protect those But if because of someone's weapon or the way that they're using it, you feel intimidated, that's still voter intimidation. Raise it with somebody at the polls who you feel would be a good person to raise it with, and call 866-OUR-VOTE and report it. Even if you can't do anything about it, I think it's important to report those instances because other people may be reporting it as well, and maybe we could do something about it.
Right, that's a great point, Caren, because as Cliff mentioned earlier, all of the calls coming in are compiled. And if we can show legislators, this is something that Hoosier voters don't want. They're concerned about this. So again, we're depending on our members, our supporters to be our eyes and ears out here on election day during early voting. So again, really appreciate all of the really good questions we've gotten tonight and folks' willingness to, step into this and really help protect the election. It's going to take a village to do this.
I thank you both for that. And I believe that was our last question. So again, thank you all for talking to our audience tonight and talking and giving a view on the landscape and talking about what they all can do. Before we sign off, would everyone like to just go around and talk about where the best way to contact them or reach them would be? And yeah.
Yep, I'm happy to do that. I will put my email in the chat. It's cshort@lwv.org. Feel free to reach out to me. Looking forward to hearing from some Hoosiers.
And Linda Hanson, I've put my email in the chat, so it will go out in the email. You could also get on lwvin.org and look at all of our information. There is a way to contact us through the website as well.
And I'm at jvaughn@commoncause.org.
And my email will hopefully go in the chat and be sent out. It is chelm@clccrul.org, which is a lot of letters. So hopefully that can get in an email. Or I can't send it. Oh, okay. And I'll put it. Yeah, thank you, Caren. And it's in the chat now.
And I did notice a question in the chat prompted by our discussion about Indiana's gun laws. Yes, if a school, for example, schools are lots of polling places. So, if the rules for the location would prohibit guns, then they would not be in the polling place. But, if they're not prohibited by the location, then people are free to carry their gun to vote.
Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And yeah, this was very informative, and hopefully you'll learn something and we're able to figure out a few ways to get engaged, and we'll be chatting with you all soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.